So the idea here is this: anyone can claim they speak for God. I speak for God. That's easy to say that, but can you back it up? Can you give some evidence that you speak for God? And what else would that be but miracles and prophecy? So it's not just enough to claim that you speak for God and that you have a message from God. That really doesn't mean that much. Can you back it up and show us that you do in fact speak for God? And that would be, your message would have to be accompanied by miracles and prophecy to make sure, to let us all know that you're legit spokesperson for God. Now, this idea of using miracles to discern God's action in the world has traditionally been called the motives of credibility. These are the rational grounds for accepting divine revelation. So it is precisely these motives of credibility that move the intellect. This is how we know God has spoken, because He has given us miracles and prophecy that accompany a message versus not. This is exactly what sets Christian revelation apart and off from every other type of revelation that claims to speak for God. Now, this idea, of course, of using miracles to back up your claim, this did not originate with St. Thomas Aquinas. He's just simply repeating what Jesus Himself taught. For example, I have several examples in your book of where Jesus Himself appeals to miracles to establish His claim as a divine being. He does this really all the time. Here are just a couple of examples. Jesus says, "If I do not do the works of my Father, don't believe me. But if I do, though you do not believe me, believe the works." In other words, if I can't back up my claim, don't buy it. But if I do, accept what I'm saying, you see. I mean, that's exactly what's being said here, right? Or here's another passage. Jesus says, "Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves." At least believe, either believe me or believe on the evidence of the works themselves. What works is He talking about? Well, raising the dead and healing the blind and all these miracles that Jesus is doing in the Gospels. Jesus Himself is appealing to motives of credibility to move His audience to make that decision and make that act of faith, and to establish and back up His claim that He is in fact a divine being. So the point here is that the motives of credibility, the presence of miracles and prophecy that we're going to talk about later on, and we're going to go into more detail about this, that the presence of these things makes all the difference in the world. If you've got them, that establishes the message as legit. If you don't have them, well, then you just don't know. Like again, anybody can say they speak for God. That's easy. What's hard is to back up that claim with certain signs that we would know that there is a supernatural being behind this sort of message. That's what's much more difficult, and that's why Jesus appeals to these sorts of things, again, all the time in the Gospels.